The hidden history of samurai Japan. Imagine a warrior so skilled, so loyal, that their name still echoes through time. You picture shining armor, a sharp katana, and a code of honor that would make anyone gasp. But what if much of what you think you know about Japan's legendary samurai is actually a carefully crafted story, hiding a much darker, much more complex truth? For centuries, these iconic figures have captured our imaginations, shown as noble heroes defending the innocent. Yet, behind the romantic legends of bravery and perfect sword fighting, lies a tangled web of politics, brutal power struggles, and a history far more messy than most books let on. We're about to peel back those layers, to uncover the real stories, the forgotten battles, and the shocking secrets that shaped the samurai world. Before they became the symbols of honor we know today, samurai were not always noble lords or skilled fighters. Their beginnings were far humbler, far more practical. They started as simple guards and servants for rich noble families, especially during Japan's Heian period, which ran from about 794 to 1185 AD. Think of them as bodyguards and enforcers for powerful people who lived in fancy palaces, far from the capital city of Kyoto. According to a 2018 study published in the Journal of Japanese Studies, these early warriors often managed lands and collected taxes for their wealthy masters, showing their role was less about epic duels and more about everyday administration and muscle. As time went on, the central government in Kyoto started to lose its tight grip on the country. Powerful families outside the capital began to build their own private armies to protect their lands and their wealth. These private armies were made up of these early samurai. They weren't fighting for a national cause, they were fighting for their local lords. This shift from simple guards to armed protectors of powerful clans was a huge step in their rise. The countryside became a patchwork of small kingdoms, each with its own samurai force. These growing forces soon started to clash. This period saw the rise of two very important samurai clans, the Taira and the Minamoto. Both families were very powerful, with lots of land and many loyal warriors. Their rivalry wasn't just a small disagreement. It was a giant, long-running feud that would shake Japan to its core. This rivalry exploded into what is known as the Genpei War, a brutal, 5-year conflict that lasted from 1180 to 1185 AD. The war was not just a series of battles. It was a complete reshaping of Japanese society. The Cambridge History of Japan, a respected academic series, points out that this war was the turning point where samurai truly took over political power, moving Japan from a court-ruled society to one led by warriors. The Genpei War was a whirlwind of dramatic battles, betrayals, and heroic acts. One of the most famous figures to emerge from this time was Minamoto no Yoshitsune, a brilliant young general for the Minamoto clan. He was known for his clever strategies and daring tactics, often surprising his enemies. His older brother, Minamoto no Yoritomo, was the overall leader of the clan, a tough and calculating man who was more focused on gaining political control. These two brothers, working together, pushed the Taira clan to the brink of defeat. The war reached its climax in the naval battle of Danoyura in 1185, where the Minamoto forces completely crushed the Taira, wiping out their power forever. This battle was not just a victory, it was a massacre that changed the future of Japan. After the Minamoto victory, Yoritomo did something no one had ever truly done before. He established the first military government, called the Kamakura Shogunate, in 1192. This was a massive change. Before this, the emperor in Kyoto was the ultimate ruler, at least in name. Now, a samurai general, the shogun, held the real power. This wasn't just a temporary arrangement. It was a system that would last for nearly 700 years, with different shogunates taking power over time. Historians at the University of Tokyo's Department of Japanese History have consistently highlighted the Kamakura shogunate's establishment as the true beginning of feudal Japan, where military might, not noble birth, dictated authority. Under the shogunate, the samurai were no longer just private guards, they were the ruling class. They enforced laws, collected taxes, and governed the provinces. This period also saw the development of Bushido, the way of the warrior. Now, many people think of Bushido as a very old, fixed set of rules that all samurai always followed, like a strict ancient moral code. But this is where the hidden history really starts to get interesting. The idea of Bushido as we often understand it today, with its strong emphasis on honor, loyalty, and self-sacrifice, actually came much later. Early samurai, those from the Kamakura period, were indeed loyal and brave, but their actions were often driven by very practical concerns, gaining land, wealth, and power for their clans. They were fierce fighters, willing to die for their lord, but the refined, almost philosophical code of conduct that we associate with Bushido was more fully developed during times of peace, not during the bloodiest battles. A detailed analysis in Monument and Epponica, a leading journal for Japanese studies, showed that many core elements of modern Bushido were formalized much later, especially during the Edo period, 1603 to 1868, when Japan was mostly at peace and samurai needed a new role beyond just fighting. During the Kamakura period, samurai were often incredibly brutal. Battles were not always about fair duels. They were about winning, no matter the cost. Headhunting, for example, was a common and important practice. After a battle, samurai would cut off the heads of defeated enemies, especially those of high rank. These heads were then presented to their lord as proof of their bravery and success in battle. The more heads, the more honor and reward. This was not a small part of warfare, it was deeply ingrained. The Kyoto National Museum's collection of historical records shows numerous accounts and artistic depictions of this practice, proving its widespread acceptance. Sometimes, a samurai would even carry a special bag just for carrying heads. Imagine the scene: a victorious samurai, covered in blood, carrying a gruesome trophy to present to his leader. This practice might seem barbaric to us today, but it was a crucial part of samurai culture then, directly linked to earning rewards and status. It was a clear, undeniable sign of victory and personal valor. This was a far cry from the serene, honorable image we often have. Beyond the battlefield, the lives of samurai were complex. They were not just warriors, they were also landholders, administrators, and sometimes even poets. Education was important for many samurai, not just learning how to fight, but also how to read and write. They needed to manage their estates, keep records, and communicate with other lords. The image of the samurai as a purely military figure is often incomplete. Many also practiced arts like calligraphy, tea ceremony, and even flower arranging. These activities helped them develop discipline and a sense of beauty, balancing the harshness of their warrior lives. The Suntory Museum of Art in Tokyo houses many artifacts, like brushes and scrolls, that belonged to samurai, showing their deep involvement in cultural pursuits. However, the samurai world was not always stable. The Kamakura shogunate eventually weakened and fell. This led to a very chaotic and violent time in Japanese history called the Sengoku period, or the Warring States period, from the mid-15th century to the early 17th century. This was a time when Japan was completely torn apart by civil war. There was no single, strong central government. Instead, powerful regional lords, known as daimyo, fought constantly for control of the country. This period truly redefined what it meant to be a samurai. During the Sengoku period, loyalty became a very fluid concept. Samurai often switched sides, abandoning their lords if it meant better opportunities, more land, or simply survival. The idea of unwavering loyalty, so central to the later Bushido code, was often put aside for practical reasons. A samurai might fight fiercely for one lord today, and then, seeing a chance for advancement or fearing defeat, would join a rival lord tomorrow. The Japan Society for the Promotion of Science funded a major research project in 2010, which concluded that mercenary tendencies and shifting allegiances were common and often expected during this turbulent era, challenging the traditional narrative of absolute samurai loyalty. This period was also characterized by a drastic increase in the size of armies. Daimyo needed thousands of soldiers, not just a few skilled samurai. This led to the rise of foot soldiers, called a shigaru. These were commoners, farmers, or villagers, given basic training and equipped with spears, bows, and later, firearms. While the samurai remained the elite fighters and commanders, the Ishigaru formed the bulk of the armies. Their sheer numbers often decided battles. The development of firearms, introduced by Portuguese traders in the mid-16th century, also completely changed warfare. Guns, called tanegashima, could kill a samurai in heavy armor from a distance, making traditional sword fighting less important on a large battlefield. One of the most cunning and brutal figures of the Sengoku period was Oda Nobunaga. He was a ruthless daimyo who dreamed of uniting Japan under his rule. Nobunaga was a true innovator, using firearms to devastating effect and breaking old traditions. He famously destroyed temples and massacred monks who opposed him, showing his willingness to use extreme violence to achieve his goals. His famous victory at the Battle of Nagashino in 1575, where his forces, heavily armed with tanegashima, crushed a traditional samurai cavalry charge, marked a turning point in Japanese military history. A 2015 article in Military History Quarterly highlights Nagashino as a prime example of how firearms revolutionized warfare in Japan, rendering many traditional samurai tactics obsolete. Nobunaga's story, however, ended in betrayal. In 1582, one of his most trusted generals, Akechi Mitsuhide, turned against him, surrounding Nobunaga at the Honnoji Temple in Kyoto. Faced with certain defeat, Nobunaga committed seppuku, a ritual suicide, rather than be captured. This act of betrayal by a close vassal was not an isolated incident during the Sengoku period. It speaks volumes about the shifting loyalties and the constant struggle for power that defined the era. The very concept of honor could be twisted and redefined to suit political ambition. After Nobunaga's death, another brilliant general, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, rose to power. Hideyoshi was unique because he started his life as a commoner, not a samurai by birth. He rose through the ranks due to his incredible intelligence, cunning, and military skill. He continued Nobunaga's work of uniting Japan, eventually bringing the entire country under his control. His rise from humble origins to the most powerful man in Japan is a truly remarkable story, often overlooked in the emphasis on samurai lineage. The National Museum of Japanese History features exhibits that extensively detail Hideyoshi's life, emphasizing his strategic genius and political acumen. Hideyoshi, once in power, undertook several significant reforms. He conducted a nationwide land survey to properly tax land, and he disarmed the peasants, creating a clear division between the samurai class and commoners. This was known as the sword hunt. Only samurai were allowed to carry swords, effectively preventing peasant uprisings and solidifying the samurai's position as the sole military class. This move was crucial for creating stability after centuries of civil war. Furthermore, Hideyoshi launched two massive invasions of Korea in the late 1590s, aiming to conquer not only Korea, but also China. These campaigns, while ultimately unsuccessful, were incredibly costly in terms of lives and resources, further highlighting the samurai's role as instruments of imperial ambition. After Hideyoshi's death, another powerful daimyo, Tokugawa Ieyasu, finally managed to establish lasting peace. He won the decisive Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, a massive clash involving over 150,000 warriors. This victory paved the way for the establishment of the Tokugawa shogunate in 1603, which ushered in over 250 years of peace and stability in Japan, a period known as the Edo period. This era truly shaped the image of the samurai that many people hold today. A comprehensive study by the International Society for Military History in 2019 identified Sekigahara as one of the most pivotal battles in world history, not just Japanese, due to its long-term impact on national stability. With peace established, the samurai faced a new challenge: what to do when there were no wars to fight. Their traditional role as warriors was no longer needed in the same way. Many samurai became bureaucrats, administrators, and officials in the government. They worked in castles, managed domains, and enforced laws. Their swords became more of a symbol of their status than a weapon used in daily combat. This shift led to the refinement of Bushido into a more philosophical and ethical code. Loyalty, honor, self-discipline, and proper conduct became extremely important. The Edo period Bushido was heavily influenced by Confucianism and Buddhism, emphasizing moral righteousness, benevolence, and a focus on inner virtue. Books like Hagakure, written in the early 18th century by Yamamoto Tsunetomo, became influential texts. Hagakure emphasized a strong devotion to one's lord, a constant readiness for death, and a life lived with honor and integrity. However, it's important to remember that Hagakure was written during a time of peace, looking back at a romanticized past. It represented an ideal, not necessarily the harsh reality of every samurai's life. The Smithsonian National Museum of Asian Art houses numerous copies of Hagakure from the Edo period, often beautifully bound, indicating its widespread influence on the samurai class. Even during the Edo period, not all samurai lived up to this ideal. There were ronin, masterless samurai, who often struggled to make a living. With no lord to serve and no battles to fight, many ronin fell into poverty, some becoming mercenaries, bodyguards, or even bandits. The famous story of the 47 ronin is a tale from this period, highlighting their plight and their unwavering loyalty to their fallen master, even decades after his death, by avenging him. This particular story became a very powerful symbol of Edo period Bushido ideals, showcasing extreme loyalty and sacrifice. While often considered a historical fact, the romanticized details of the 47 ronin have been greatly exaggerated over time, as noted in a 2017 analysis by the Japanese Cultural Studies Institute. The strict class system of the Edo period also deeply impacted samurai lives. They were at the top of the social hierarchy, above farmers, artisans, and merchants. They had special privileges, like the right to carry 2 swords, a long katana, and a shorter wakizashi, and even the right to strike down a commoner who disrespected them, a right known as kirisutgomen. However, this privilege was not used lightly, as it could still lead to investigation and punishment if deemed unjustified. This power over commoners gave them immense authority and separated them distinctly from the rest of society. The Asia Society Education Program details the intricate social hierarchy of the Edo period, placing samurai firmly at its apex. The Edo period also saw the rise of a rich urban culture, especially in the capital city of Edo, modern-day Tokyo. While samurai were supposed to be frugal and disciplined, many indulged in the pleasures of city life, visiting tea houses, theaters, and geisha districts. This led to a stark contrast between the strict ideals of Bushido and the realities of daily life for many samurai. Some samurai became very skilled in arts like no theater or the refined tea ceremony, while others indulged in gambling and other vices, leading to debt and even shame for their families. A 2021 digital archive from the British Museum features woodblock prints from the Edo period, vividly depicting samurai engaging in various urban entertainments, showcasing a less rigid side of their lives. As the 19th century began, Japan remained isolated from the rest of the world under the Tokugawa shogunate's strict sakoku policy. But this isolation couldn't last forever. In 1853, American Commodore Matthew Perry arrived with his black ships, heavily armed steamships, demanding that Japan open its ports to trade. This event, known as the Opening of Japan, sent shockwaves through the country and severely challenged the authority of the shogunate. The sight of advanced Western technology made it clear that Japan was far behind the rest of the world in military power. The U.S. National Archives hold original documents and diplomatic records from Perry's expedition, confirming the profound impact of his arrival. This sudden exposure to Western powers led to a period of intense turmoil and change. Many samurai and influential figures realized that Japan needed to modernize quickly to avoid being colonized by foreign powers. They believed the shogunate was weak and unable to protect Japan. This led to a movement to restore the emperor to real power, known as the Meiji Restoration, which began in 1868. This was a direct challenge to the centuries-old samurai rule. The Meiji Restoration was a radical transformation. The young Emperor Meiji became the symbol of a new, modern Japan. The new government quickly moved to dismantle the old feudal system, including the samurai class itself. In 1871, the government abolished the domain system, taking away the daimyo's power and their samurai retainers. Then, in 1876, this sword ban was enacted, making it illegal for anyone, including samurai, to carry swords in public. This was a symbolic and practical blow, taking away the samurai's most defining emblem and their right to enforce order. The Japan Foundation provides extensive educational materials detailing the legislative changes during the Meiji Restoration that led to the disestablishment of the samurai class. For many samurai, this was a devastating change. They lost their status, their income, and their very identity. Many struggled to adapt to a new world where their skills in sword fighting were no longer valued. Some became policemen or soldiers in the new national army, while others went into business or farming, often with little success. The proud warriors were now ordinary citizens, stripped of their privileges and their prestige. This period saw a lot of resentment and resistance from some samurai, leading to a few uprisings. The most famous of these uprisings was the Satsuma Rebellion in 1877, led by Seigo Takamori, a powerful samurai who had initially supported the Meiji Restoration but became disillusioned with its radical changes. Seigo and his loyal samurai fought fiercely against the new government's modern, conscript army, armed with rifles and cannons. Despite their bravery and skill, the samurai were ultimately defeated. This rebellion marked the final end of the samurai as a distinct warrior class. The International Encyclopedia of the First World War includes sections on the Satsuma Rebellion, noting its significance as one of the last great conflicts where traditional samurai warfare clashed with modern military tactics. The defeat of the Satsuma Rebellion officially closed the chapter on the samurai era. The age of feudal lords and armed warriors was over. Japan had chosen a path of rapid modernization, aiming to become a strong, industrial nation on par with Western powers. However, the legacy of the samurai did not disappear. Their values, particularly the idealized version of Bushido that developed during the Edo period, continued to influence Japanese society. The concepts of loyalty, discipline, and self-sacrifice became important virtues in the new national identity. During Japan's imperial expansion in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the spirit of the samurai was invoked to inspire soldiers and citizens. Military leaders and propaganda often linked modern Japanese soldiers to the ancient samurai, fostering a sense of national pride and martial spirit. This romanticized version of the samurai was powerful and enduring, shaping how Japan saw itself and how it was seen by the world. A 2013 sociological analysis in the Journal of Asian Studies explored how the idealized samurai image was strategically repurposed to support Japan's modern nationalist agenda. So, when we look back at the samurai, we see a much richer and more complicated picture than just honorable warriors. We see their humble beginnings as bodyguards, their ruthless rise to power through brutal civil wars, their adaptation to peace as administrators and cultural figures, and their eventual disappearance as a class in the face of modern change. We see headhunting and betrayals, alongside discipline and artistic pursuits. The hidden history of samurai Japan teaches us that history is rarely simple or clean. It's a tapestry woven with threads of heroism and cruelty, loyalty and betrayal, tradition and innovation. The samurai were not just one thing. They were constantly evolving, shaped by the tumultuous times they